Petro Poroshenko, the fifth president of Ukraine, welcome once again to the Halifax International Minister Hulusi Akar, Defense Minister of Turkey, thank you so much for joining us at HFX 2020.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pity we can't meet in person, but such are the times we live in. And I remember talking to you, was it a couple of years ago, at Halifax itself?
True, yes.
Yes. Minister, there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on in the United States of America from where I'm talking to you in the heart of Washington, D.C., in fact, right next to the White House. Relations between the United States and Turkey have been tested over several issues in recent years. How do you see the evolution of relations between the United States and Turkey with the incoming United States administration of President-elect Biden?
Robin, thank you. Thank you very much. And then, by the way, taking this opportunity, the distinguished participants, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all, and then the greetings from Ankara Ministry of Defense. And it is once again a great privilege to address such a distinguished audience. I would like to warmly thank Peter Van Praag and the forum for the invitation to this world-class event, where current and the future security challenges are addressed. Taking this opportunity, especially on the note, I would also like to extend my greetings to Minister Harjit, great personality over there, and to Mrs. Cindy McCain, and respectfully recall the memory of the Senator John McCain. Now answering the question, I'm trying to answer your question. Turkey and the United States have deep-rooted and long-standing strategic relations. We have been steadfast allies for almost 70 years, as you know. We have, of course, the ups and downs in these relations, as in the other countries, and the occasional sharp differences of opinion. But let's not forget that we have a long tradition of cooperation and overcoming challenges through dialogue between the two countries. In Korea, for instance, Somalia, the Balkans, Afghanistan, and in the other geographies worldwide, we have worked very closely together, shoulder to shoulder. And much of our daily successful cooperation on a wide and common agenda goes unnoticed, while differences are sometimes highlighted, unfortunately. Sometimes perceptions can overshadow reality, causing misperceptions. So we must avoid this. This is a very important issue. Our militaries, for instance, conduct exercises at air, land, and sea, in addition to the operations and the common activities in any corner of the world. As a recent example, for instance, we supported the U.S. Bomber Task Force missions over Europe and the Black Sea just a few days ago. We believe that the current challenges at the regional and the global level require that we further enhance and strengthen our bilateral relations as well as the transatlantic ties. We wish to work closely. We wish to work closely with our counterparts, of course, also in the new U.S. administration, the minister to minister, military to military, and then we are for that cooperation coordination. It is no secret that certain issues cast a shadow on the Turkish-American alliance. For example, the procurement of the S-400 emerged as a big issue, unfortunately. In this issue, please consider that our only goal is to provide air and missile defense for 83 million Turkish citizens and our country. That's it. It's so simple. And we reached this point after a long, open, and transparent procurement process. What else could we do? Furthermore, the security of the F-35's technology is certainly just as vital for Turkey as it is for the United States. So please consider, because these are the issues, these are the points. We know that the United States had some concerns, and our offer to address these concerns is still on the table. In any case, We must avoid the language of the threats and the sanctions, which is not an appropriate means to address differences among almost 70-year-old allies. Turkey plays an indispensable part in the destiny of a wide region, including in the transatlantic area. Please remember, Turkey's resolute stance on many issues helps to deter adversaries and, of course, specifically terrorists. I believe that the United States as a global power, all of us know aware of this, and the Turkey as a regional power can continue to complement each other for the benefit of our nations and the whole region, maybe the whole world. In conclusion, I believe that the ties of alliance based on our shared values and enduring long-term common interests will continue to provide vital contributions to peace and security.
Minister, Turkey not only has a long-standing, very important bilateral relationship with the United States, Turkey is also a member of NATO, and it occupies a fundamentally important part in NATO's architecture. I mean, all you have to do is look at the map, frankly, to see how important Turkey is. And yet there have, of course, been difficulties between different NATO members. The Mediterranean is a difficult place. There are lots of old rivalries going on. Have recent developments affected Turkey's perspective on NATO?
Robin, thank you. This is another important question from time to time we are facing. And we are trying to explain our counterpart, our colleagues, friends, as the most successful alliance in history. First of all, we firmly believe NATO is as active and vibrant as ever. Number one. Number two, continues to successfully adapt and counter diverse threats currently. As a NATO ally for almost 7 decades, Turkey has made essential contributions to Euro-Atlantic security. The alliance is the cornerstone of our defense and security policy as well. Turkey is among the top 5 troop contributors to NATO missions and operations. Everyone knows this. And among the top 8 contributors in financial terms too. In an alliance of the 30 nations, different views and the approaches are quite normal. The strength of NATO lies in its ability to overcome differences. Turkey is at the core of NATO, no doubt, sharing all its values and burdens, and plus fulfilling all its responsibilities in operation and exercises, whatever needed. In addition to dealing with the regional crises, fighting terrorist groups, and contributing to NATO's missions. We are also protecting the borders of NATO and Europe. Remember, our borders at the same time, the borders of the NATO and Europe. This is a heavy burden. I believe you will appreciate it. Turkey's priority is always to address all challenges, first and foremost, in solidarity and cooperation with its allies. Finally, we only seek solidarity, cooperation, and the understanding from our allies in an objective and impartial manner. This is all what we are requesting from our allied countries.
Minister, you've obviously seen the recent terrible events in France with the beheadings, with the terrorist problem that exists all over Europe, and it exists all over the world, frankly. Turkey has also suffered terribly from terrorism, and you're right on the border, of course, of the region in which a lot of that terrorism actually arises. What is the latest situation in Turkey regarding terrorism? I mean, are you at a state of alert, or are you always at a state of alert? I mean, just give a sense of how you have to be prepared for terrorist attacks in Turkey.
Yes, when we look at around in general, we are fighting against terrorism in any corner of around Turkey, around one country. As you see, the current security environment is more unstable, and unpredictable than ever in our region, unfortunately. We are particularly concerned that the terrorist organizations continue to take advantage of the power vacuums and the disorders around in the geography around Turkey. Today, we are conducting a relentless struggle against Daesh, also known as ISIS, the PKK-YPG, as well as the Gülenist terrorist organization. Now, it is very important from the top down. We are fighting against them in many cases. So we are very much engaged in all our armies engaged in fighting against them. The PKK, number one issue, is a separatist terrorist organization which is responsible for the deaths of the 40,000 innocent people of Turkey. So the PKK is on the list of the terrorist organizations. Please note, as I said to my colleagues on many occasions, the YPG is the Syrian branch of the PKK. This is very important. And we are experiencing a very big difficulty in convincing, in explaining the situation, this reality to our dear friends. This is a key issue. The YPG, PKK engaged in every type of malign and the oppressive activity. Unfortunately, some refer to this terror group as the Kurds. The Kurds. This is completely incorrect. In fact, the YPG is the biggest oppressor of Kurds. To associate it with the Kurds is the biggest insult to ordinary Kurdish people. This is not from the books, but in practice. They are not meeting with many Kurds, innocent, regular Kurdish people. This is what they are saying. Just as Daesh does not represent Muslims, the PKK, YPG does not represent the Kurds. Speaking of Daesh, let me first underline that Turkey has been at the forefront in the fight against the vicious terrorist organization. We have actively participated in coalition efforts against Daesh and have paid a heavy price. This is why Daesh attacked Turkey and caused the loss of almost 600 innocent Turkish citizens. I should emphasize that the Turkish armed forces is the only, this is very important, only allied army to fight Daesh hand to hand. The rest of them are fighting by air. As you know, Turkey alone has neutralized almost 4,000 of the most radical Daesh militants, both in Syria and Iraq. Despite this fact, we have unfortunately witnessed manipulative claims and disinformation against one country. This is unfair. In addition, we prevented the entrance of the thousands of the foreign terrorist fighters to Turkey and extradited thousands of them from my country. FETÖ, the Gülenist terrorist organization, is also one of the most serious threats to Turkey. This is a clandestine, criminal, and the terrorist organization, which is without the precedent in terms of its global reach, ambitions, and the methods. To understand the security threat posed by the terrorist organization, it is enough to look at the 15th July coup attempt, failed coup attempt in Turkey. During this attempt, FETÖ, this terrorist organization, killed 251 Turkish citizens and wounded more than 2,000.
Syria is not an easy place to navigate, and obviously, as you've pointed out, you're right on the front line. What is the Turkish approach to the regime of Bashar al-Assad? I mean, does this regime have to go? If so, what would replace it? I mean, it's very easy sitting in Washington, D.C. or London to just create some sort of blueprint for Syria. You're right on the border with Syria. What is your approach to the future of Syria?
Because the Syrian crisis has become the bloodiest conflict, for your information, in the region since World War II. We have embraced millions of Syrians, on the other hand, and Iraqi refugees, regardless of their ethnicity or faith, including Yazidis, Arabs, Christians, Assyrians, and many others. This is very important, and this should be known by everybody. We have prevented humanitarian tragedies and separatist aims. Over the last 4 years, we had to conduct for operations in the north of Syria, our aims were, this is very important again, to protect our borders and citizens, to eliminate the threat of terrorism, to stop irregular migration, and to establish a safe zone for the displaced Syrians. As our President Erdogan stressed many times, we will not allow the terrorist organization, the PKK, PYD, YPG, to establish a terror corridor along our borders. This is a very important issue. As you know, we are hosting around 3.6 million Syrians in Turkey and providing aid and assistance to a further 4 million internally displaced persons, IDP, inside Syria. This is a considerable burden for Turkey on behalf of Europe and the international community. In Idlib, now still we are fighting over there, we stop all those undesired developments. In Idlib, the ceasefire declared with Turkey's efforts in March has greatly reduced the violence currently. However, we should be very cautious of the serious potential for the further regime attacks, which could cause massive flows of refugees to Turkey and beyond. As a result of Turkey's extensive efforts and assistance to help normalize life, a huge humanitarian crisis has been prevented. Sure. And over 1 million people have returned safely, voluntarily, and in a dignified manner, as stated in the United Nations documents, to their lands and their homes. We firmly support the UN-led political process. Ultimately, we wish to see a stable, democratic, politically and territorially united Syria as our neighbor. This is what we are trying to do with our activities. That's all I can tell you.
Minister, the region you live in is fraught with difficulties, and the whole Mediterranean region. I wanted to turn to Libya right now, and it's extraordinary what has been going on in Libya, where Turkey has essentially been on the side of the United Nations posture, and yet other countries, including fellow NATO members like France, have taken a different position. I mean, the events in Libya have reached a new stage with the UN-led dialogue. What is Turkey's perspective right now on Libya?
Yeah, Robin, thank you. Thank you for this question. This is very simple, the answer. The preservation of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the political unity of Libya are our guiding principles, number one. And we support the UN-recognized legitimate government of Libya, the government of the National Accord, GNA. After the forces intensified their attacks on Tripoli in 2019, the head of GNA asked for support from 5 countries. Turkey was the only nation to respond positively to this request. We are providing train, assist, and the advice support to the government of Libya based on this invitation and our bilateral agreement. Remember, Haftar's forces, supported by mercenary groups, have indiscriminately shelled hospitals, ports, airports, schools, embassies, residential areas, and medical supply depots. They cut off the water and the power supply of Tripoli as well, even during the COVID-19 pandemic. As part of our humanitarian assistance, we are running a hospital, clearing landmines and IEDs led by Haftar's forces. The mass graves, also discovered after Haftar's forces withdrew, are evidence of crimes against humanity. Turkey prevented further humanitarian tragedies by responding to the call of the legitimate Libyan government. Please note, by the end of March, the GNA started a counter-offensive operation, and its strong resistance against the Haftar prevented further chaos. This provided a valuable window of opportunity for a peaceful resolution. Haftar and his foreign supporters must not be allowed to spoil this opportunity. In order to achieve peaceful resolution, we support UN-led peace efforts. In the end, that I can tell you, in both Syria and Libya, Turkey has been the country that prevented new humanitarian tragedies and further refugee flows. We fight against them, for the benefit of Turkey, but at the same time for the benefit of the allied countries as well.
Thank you, Minister. Finally, let's spin back to the Eastern Mediterranean. As I said, there's barely a dull moment in your part of the world. What is Turkey's approach to the Eastern Mediterranean? I mean, there are all sorts of different issues going on at once. What are your expectations? What are the outcomes in that part of the world?
There are, unfortunately, a number of disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean and in the Aegean Sea. The core of these disputes are the excessive claims by the Greek government and the Greek Cypriot administration. And then we have to know this first. They violate the sovereign rights of both Turkey and the Turkish Cypriots is another important issue. For example, in the Aegean Sea, the Greek government has violated international agreements. It is very clear by undermining the demilitarized status of the islands. Very important. They violated it. It is open. Everyone knows this. Furthermore, they claim territorial waters of 6 miles, but their airspace claim is for 10 miles. This is a one-of-a-kind approach and is only asserted by the Greek government in the world. There is no example. There's not an example. This is also the pretext of their allegations for the so-called airspace violations. In fact, it is not just Turkey that recognizes these inconsistencies. Some countries also indicate them. No need to tell their name. Keep in mind, Turkey has the longest coastline in the Eastern Mediterranean, almost 2,000 kilometers. However, they are trying to confine Turkey strictly to her coasts. Furthermore, the Greek government claims continental shelf area of 40,000 square kilometers for a 10 square kilometers island. Unbelievable. This island is about 600 kilometers away from the Greek mainland, but is only 2 kilometers away from Turkey, 1,950 meters away from Turkey. It is obvious that such claims are not realistic, not fair, or not acceptable. As a matter of fact, both the United States and the EU state that the map used by the Greek government for her claims has no legal value. I must emphasize, Turkey has no intention of violating any country's legitimate rights, interests, or borders. However, Turkey will naturally stand firm against attempts to harm her rights and interests, and those of the Turkish Cypriots. Indeed, we have been very patient. We waited for more than a decade to start seismic research activities in the continental shelf that we had registered. This is very important. That we had registered in 2004 with the United Nations. Despite the differences, we are in favor of resolving all the outstanding problems with Greece through international law, good neighborly relations, mutual goodwill, respect, dialogue, and negotiation, whatever needed. We are ready. This is why we welcome NATO's deconfliction mechanism and Germany's diplomatic initiatives. We conducted 3 meetings for confidence building measures, and we have sent an invitation to our Greek colleagues to host the 4th meeting in Ankara. We are ready. If they can come, tomorrow we are ready to host them here in Ankara. The exploratory talks, the call for the equitable revenue sharing on the island of Cyprus, and the idea of a regional conference on the Eastern Mediterranean are all concrete proposals that we have made. We are ready for a substantive dialogue with Greece on all the outstanding issues without any preconditions. No preconditions. For its part, Turkey has repeatedly shown her goodwill with diplomatic initiatives. All we are asking from our friends and allies is to look at the Greece's claims and their practices in the light of logical and objective criteria, without bias or prejudice, and to compare them to Turkey's legitimate, reasonable, and the common sense approach. Please do it. Thank you.
Minister Hulusi Akar, of National Defense Minister of Turkey, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
I notice behind you, and this is great because the subject of the discussion is remaking the democratic world order 75 years after the Second World War. And it's interesting that right behind you, you've got quite a bit of the democratic world order on either side of the Polish flag. You have the NATO flag on one side, you have the European Union flag on the other. Does that make you feel safer than if those two institutions somehow didn't exist?
When I started my career, there was a completely different dimension. And I always say everything is possible in our life. I joined the army in 1987. It was a completely different world. And I remember first time actually in the Czech Republic when I met US officer, and we had a lot of long discussions about perceptions from completely two different sides of a hill. And right now I'm in Poles, we are in the proper side, but the world is still dynamic, and we are surprised nearly every month. We had a couple of discussions in my headquarters, what happened in 2020 in 1 year, which is not finished yet. And so a lot of things still. So flexibility is one of the, and adaptation, it's the most useful words.
Well, adaptation is, and it's interesting, isn't it? And this really is my first question to you, because speaking to us from Warsaw, you have Russia very close to where you are, and Russia has proved to be an aggressive nation, especially towards some of the countries of the former Soviet Union, such as Ukraine and Georgia. I know this is a difficult question, but it's kind of important, I think, for people who grew up with institutions like NATO and the European Union and perhaps take them for granted. Imagine a world in which these democratic institutions didn't exist. As chief of the Polish General Staff, I put it to you, you'd be in a much more precarious situation as a sovereign democracy today than if organizations like NATO and the EU didn't exist.
I would answer that way. From the Polish perspective, the most important is the historical context. And I'm 2.5 years chief of defense and still going to my counterparts, and we're discussing a lot of issues concerning security. Always, we're going back to the history, and from a different capital cities, the perspective of what we're doing is completely different. So Poland, when we discuss many times really what's going on today, we had a feeling that we have to move back much more than we would think. So we moved to the 18th century to realize what happened in Poland, what didn't happen in Poland was even more important, what happened in the world, what kind of processes in the politics, in the economy, in technology, and also military security happened. And that was a fascinating trip. So let's say there's a 1772, which is very important for America, for example, the calibration of the timeline. And that was the time when Poland disappeared completely from a map. There was a partition, and we lost because we didn't have enough effective economical system. With those another part of all of the the Greenland part of the world. I mean, connections across Atlantic, and after Christopher Columbus processes and the revolution as well in England when the first Watt machine was discovered and introduced. So Poland disappeared completely. So all of those events in the history, like Washington, what happened in France during the revolution, as well as civil war in the United States and the revolution in Russia, there was a time when there was no Poland on the map completely. So we didn't have a chance to participate in certain historical events. And what happened in 1918, when after 123 years, Poland, Poland is again on a map of Europe. We had only a couple of years, 1918 up to Second World War, when we would try to put to the one system three different realities, different political system from three partitions, different education, financial, and also military. And then the Second World War, and after Second World War, the communism time. So the historical context is extremely important. So we didn't participate in many processes in Europe, many processes in the world. And right now, after 1918, when all of those changes in the euro happened, we moving and speeding up the processes, but the country, the culture, institutions, and which the military is one of them, they have some kind of a delay. So I see sometimes during the discussions unnecessarily simplification of certain explanation of those processes. So it takes a time. We're going in a good direction, but also if you're studying, I'm military, so my understanding is very physical. Space. We are in the historical crossroad, I would say. Poland is between the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea. There's a connection between North and South is absolutely critical. This line is going just across the Warsaw. And then we have an additional connection from Moscow to Berlin, or from Moscow to the western part of Europe. So again, Warsaw is just exactly in the middle. So anything happened in history, the movement, trade, and also force projection in both directions was exactly in the middle of this place, lovely called Poland. So to be honest, I cannot imagine in any kind of architecture, Poland alone without the contribution of such organization like European Union or NATO. It's absolutely, it's impossible.
When we go a little further afield, outside the European domain and the Eurasian domain, and go into East Asia, clearly there is a major question about the strategic ambitions of China. And China, of course, is a rising power. It's enormously significant economically. It's growing militarily. There's a great concern that China is interfering in democracies around the world, certainly in the United States, in Great Britain, in Central Eastern Europe very much as well. There's been a major concern. In fact, we put out, I don't know whether you've seen this, we just put out a handbook for democracies on China, and it's available in English, in French, and in Chinese as well. And really what we are trying to do, and a lot of people are trying to do at this time, is to rethink the way we look at China. And as we do that, we also have to think about global institutions. I mean, China, of course, is a member of the United Nations Security Council. It's present in many international institutions. And I guess we've already seen this to some extent with Russia under Vladimir Putin. When you have a non-democratic power, especially one as powerful as China, how do we even sensibly talk about remaking the democratic world order? What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, you'll be surprised how many times we discuss China and Poland. And again, from very historical point of view, we are very Polish soil oriented, because after such a long term of not existing, we have a need to feel and rethink many things in Poland entirely. But in the same time, in the interconnection world, in the globalized world, which is nice, we have some kind of we experienced some strategic pause when the U.S. Navy was taking care about all of the flow of goods in the world without the visibility. So nobody was able to see really all of those mechanisms from the harbors of European ports like Germany or Netherlands or Poland. What happened when the flow of flow of goods trade is going across the Indian Ocean and then Malacca Strait and back to the China? There was It was not unnatural for Poland. We are land-oriented. And then we started to study what's really going on in the West Pacific. And our perspective is not necessarily to be very engaged. It's much more for global powers, for big countries. We are European oriented. But just to understand, and from a security point of view, you mentioned the political implications and as well economical growth and rising of China, but also from a security point of view, what we really concern in Europe and also in Poland is something what we call the vacuum, security vacuum. If the United States, they don't have enough assets and resources to keep the security in Europe, and they will be engaged in the Far East. So I think China is more about the numbers of sometimes incredible numbers and economical growth, but also it's a completely different civilization. So sometimes I get a feeling that we compare uncomparable things. Mm-hmm. The standards in China, meaning of a human being or society, law is completely different in such a civilization. So we need more discussion to understand each other. Automatically, in a very reactive way, we're talking only about 5G, artificial intelligence, gathering data, different standards, and so on. But if you're asking Chinese, they don't care. It works. There's some kind of a social acceptance as well. So we have to compare, similar things, the same standards. So China definitely is one of the most important challenges. What we suffer in here is how to calibrate a radar of NATO and how to classify the China. Is it the China opportunity? Is it China challenge? Or is it China really big security threat? So still big discussion in this part of the world. For Poland, this is the linkage between United States and China, and the rivalry of two big powers, and how the Russia will be engaged in such a game. So will be more used by, I would say, by China in the Far East direction, or will be the vacuum effect in the Europe, and it will be much more, opportunities for Russia to engage in this part of the world and the Europe, which is extremely dangerous for Poland, for sure.
I've spoken to people inside NATO very recently, in fact, and one of the on this subject of China, one of the things that even people who actually work in NATO say they've been very pleasantly surprised that all members of NATO have really come together in the last couple of years in recognition that China is a strategic challenge that needs to be understood and, where necessary, needs to be met and pushed back against. I wonder in the cyber domain in particular, which must be something that you've also had to have dealings with regard to Russia, is that how central to the Polish military and strategic considerations of Poland is the cyber challenge coming from Russia, but also coming from China?
Yeah, absolutely critical. So we are engaged heavily in all of those processes, discussing, but also my political masters, my Minister of Defense, we established a cyber command. So absolutely separate institutional identity to take care only about the cyber things. So it is very visible. It's I would say a part of our wargaming, of training exercises as well. So we're trying to build as much realistic scenarios as possible. Completely different domain. Cyber which is kind of a controversial. Most of the domains where we fought for hundreds or thousands of years as militaries, land, air, and maritime, was not designed by a human being. And now the human being is so smart that design a new domain, and this domain is a trouble for us. But I would comment this issue that way. It's a matter of a price of security. So 100% of discussion when I see is balancing between the money-driven, very business-oriented model concerning 5G. Chinese providing pretty good offer for 5G infrastructure, high quality. They're pretty good, and at the same time, very, very good from an economical point of view, from a business model point of view, is very, very attractive. But at the same time, is a question. We like something which is economically better, or is better for economy, for security. It's not the same. And now is a point, who is decision maker to decide this technology is exactly what we want, and this is not acceptable because the different standards and the huge threat of different countries' penetration, so different standards. That's my observation. 100% of discussion is how much is too much, and the tendency to go to the money-driven model is very, very strong. And the army, we say absolutely not. We get evidences. We're discussing entirely in Poland. We're discussing in the NATO, on the NATO platform, but also in the bilateral. I was a couple of times in Estonia and also UK discussing. There is no question about it. It's a direct threat for infrastructure, critical infrastructure of a country, which is a new challenge for the army today. Is not only about the army's infrastructure. We are pretty good, to be honest, and we have a lot of cyber attacks, and still our defensive system is effective enough. But there's no question about the military. Banks, institutions, hospitals, so civilian critical infrastructure, which is outside of the army. So we have to take care about and link in a very complex system, military infrastructure as well as civilian one. So if the Chinese they find a weak point in one bank or in one hospital, entire system is in a big danger. So we got evidences, we have a measurement. This is the big threat for sure. So my option will be very careful, security first, and then the business. But I am military.
Just a final question, and this relates to the European Union, which is, well, of course, one of the big building blocks of the global democratic alliance architecture. Of course, Britain left the European Union in January, and there are negotiations which are in their final phase right now for the post-Brexit future relationship. At the strategic level, have you in fact spoken to your counterpart in the UK about the strategic implications after Britain has fully left the European Union? I mean, and are you in any way concerned? I mean, of course, the UK is part of NATO, and that's really where the strategic dimension is most obviously expressed. But I think right now there are a lot of people who are kind of concerned about whether Britain is going to remain as engaged as a European member of NATO for the foreseeable future. So how do you see that?
It's extremely complex the situation. There's no one simple answer, because the security today is not only the military one. Everything is linked. And from economical, political point of view, I would left for politicians and for people in the business how to deal with the very complex, divorcing process. But in the same time, when I've been to Ireland, for example, and I talked to the Ireland Chief of Defence as well as the UK, if there will be, completed the withdrawal, how about the border, which is a security issue, and many others. So my feeling is I got a very good communication with the Chief of Defence in the UK, and we're talking a lot about the NATO issues. So if the European Union EU contribution is over, we still got a concerning security platform, very effective tool. NATO. So I don't think it will be something special, but interaction, interconnections, economy, business. We see exactly today the military instruments of power are not so high in this priorities. Even if you're tracking what the Russians are doing, so low intensity proxy the military companies, private companies, and so on. So purely military approach is leading to nowhere. So European Union is very important from a strategical point of view, and the UK. If you leave European Union also in a military structure as well, because European Union has a military domain as well, that will be a big challenge for everybody.
General Andrzejczak, thank you so much for joining us at HFX 2020. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much indeed. All the best. Stay stay positive, COVID negative, we say in Poland.
That's a good line. I'm going to use that, but I won't attribute it to you. How's that?
Okay. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much. All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All the best.
Petro Poroshenko, the fifth president of Ukraine, welcome once again to the Halifax International Security Forum. It's a virtual forum this year, so welcome to HFX 2020.
I mean, I'm so happy to be on the Halifax Forum, and I want to make an address that, dear colleagues, dear friends, I would like to thank you for your very kind invitation to participate in the 2020 Halifax Security Forum, and for those who care about the state of democracy and democratic world order, I see it extremely important to assist in the discussion at this prestigious forum. It is always great to see here such a big number of friends who share the same concern about the present and future of international peace and security. And no virus, even coronavirus, and unfortunately I'm an expert now in this case, but no virus can stop us from doing what we believe right. And thank you once again for having me in the Halifax Security Forum.
Well,
Great to see you.
It's an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you with us, as it was last year. And in fact, I spoke to you last year about which was then the fifth year after the annexation of Crimea. Now it's the sixth year. There are some voices, not every voice, certainly not my voice, and certainly not the voices of many people in our community, but there are voices out there that say that Crimea is a lost cause. History has moved on. I mentioned this to you last year, and you were adamant that that's we simply cannot allow this to happen. What do you say to those people? It's obvious, and I know because you already said it to us last year, that you reject that kind of argument. Why do you reject that kind of argument? I mean, in the real world, hasn't history just moved on and Russia has got Crimea and that's it?
Look, absolutely great question. I hear these voices, and mostly these voices are from Russia. This is the way how Russia want to present current situation to the world. Okay, please accept that. But nobody in a democratic world can accept that, because this is not just a question for Ukraine, Crimea and Donbass. This is not just a question for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukrainian state. Not at all. This is the question for the global security. Because this is the first time since for the 75 years of the existence of the United Nations, when the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, when the nuclear state, breaking the international law and order, violating international law, and tried to change the post-war, post-Second World War security system based on the Security Council of United Nations. So this is the most dangerous precedent when, without any reason, Russia make a decision to make an official attack of the neighboring state, Ukraine. And we have a disastrous situation in Crimea, and we have thousands and thousands of victims connected with this Russian aggression. And What saved us in the situation 6 years ago? First, Putin definitely do not expect such kind of the reaction of the world. He think that the situation would be a little bit similar to the Georgia in the year 2008, when after half of the year, we don't have any more talks about Ossetia and Abkhazia. And on contrary, we obtained the strong reaction of the world. We create the global solidarity with Ukraine. Russia, I want to remind you, was removed from the G8. The global, very effective policy of sanction was presented to the world and was adopted against Russia. And I want to stress that sanction is working. And this is the very effective mechanism for protecting the global law and order. And point number two, our team find out the legal instrument to bring Russia to the international courts, different courts, starting from the International Court of Justice, where we find out the Convention for Financing Terrorism, for Convention for the Russian discrimination, the Hamburg arbitrage when they attacked the Kerch Strait, and many, many others. So Russia would be in court, be responsible, including the Russian leaders, for this war, for this act of aggression. And I was very much appreciate the strong position of unity demonstrated by the European Union, all 28 member states, by United States, by Canada, by New Zealand, Australia, Japan, the whole world. And our unity and solidarity can stop attempt to repeat it once again. And I just want to remind that it is extremely important for Ukraine when answering for these voices you ask me, maybe we should leave situation as it is. It was very important that United States declaration of the Secretary of State Pompeo called Crimea Declaration. And it is very right answer how the civilized world, united world, should react on this act of aggression of any country, but extremely important, again, the country which is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, nuclear state, Russia.
I wonder whether you may well disagree with the first part of this point that I want to put to you, and whilst potentially agreeing with the second part. I wonder whether at least one way to formulate what you're saying and to make this relevant to the wider world, one thinks of Taiwan, that if Crimea was simply accepted as a country that could be annexed and everyone forgets all about it, well, Taiwan would probably be invaded tomorrow. And yet, you're not actually saying that you think that the Russians are suddenly going to pull out of Crimea, that Putin is simply going to pull back and say, if I'm correct in understanding you, is saying, look, in the real world, we may not be able to overturn this, at least in the short and the medium term. However, we can make sure that Vladimir Putin and regimes that think about following his example will pay a big price for this, and it'll be sufficiently high that other countries, other people in the world will not do this again.
First of all, I fully agree with you. And the situation is, I just want to remind you that Russia is the biggest country in the world by territory. And that means that Russia has too many neighbors. And nobody knows where Russian troops can appear the very next day. It can be Baltic states, and can be Poland in Europe. It can be Belarus, or it can be Middle Asia. Or when we have a meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, then Japanese Prime Minister, we said we are too far from different points of the earth, but we have one neighbor, Russia. And this neighbor is a source of instability, is a source of danger. And with this situation, definitely, I think that this situation is absolutely unacceptable. But you are right on the second thesis, that we should do our best, that the price of aggression should every single year increase. We should analyze the new list of sanctions. We should understand how the Russian aggression for Russia should be unbearable for the offender. And this is also be example for any country in the world on the example of Russia, that the price of aggression should rise up every single year, exactly as we do in our coordination with the whole world. And to develop and formalize my previous initiative for establishing, and this is extremely important, establishing the international platform for Crimea, because Normandy format is dealing mostly with the aggression of Russian Federation on the Donbass. But it is vitally important to create the international platform on Crimea, and we put this initiative to international community in the year 2015 and in the year 2016 on the General Assembly of the United Nations, and I'm very much proud that the United Nations General Assembly adopted several very strong resolutions for against Crimea occupation by a country aggressor, by Russia.
Is the current president of Ukraine, your successor, President Zelensky, is he? Well, I'm not asking you at all to talk about domestic politics, but on this very particular issue, is his administration essentially following in your footsteps? Are they doing, in your opinion, what they should be doing with this?
Look, this is the position of the whole country. This is the position of Ukrainian people. What Putin expected, that he wanted country would be divided by two. He has even the name of the project Novorossiya, that half of Ukraine will welcoming Putin when he entered by troops. And that would not be an aggression, that would be a welcoming step. But when he saw that the whole population, the whole people with the weapons in the hands go to the war to stop the Russian aggression, this is a reaction of the whole country. And definitely the President Zelensky, who was elected last year, he continued all my initiative to counteract Russian aggression. I mean, it would be Minsk format, Normandy format for implementation of Minsk agreement, which is very simple. Russia should remove all the occupational troops from Ukrainian soil. Russia should take all their heavy artillery and weapons. We should, together with the international community, disarm all the illegal armed formation, and we should establish the Ukrainian law and order and should provide the local election on the territory which was occupied. And the most important thing that on the first stage, it should be international peacekeepers. And on the second stage, it should be Ukrainian troops who put the control on the uncontrolled part of Ukrainian-Russian border. Without that, it is impossible to restore all the peace, law and order. And I'm very much proud that all the documents which I signed as a president now is a basis for the international coordination to motivate Russia to take out from Ukrainian soil.
Moving on to the very big picture now, it's a big enough picture, but moving to the even bigger picture. You mentioned a little while ago, and you reminded everyone that Russia is, of course, on the United Nations Security Council. China is too, and we see the evisceration of the one country, two systems arrangement in Hong Kong taking place before our eyes. This makes it extremely difficult when we think about remaking an international order. I mean, you know, these countries are very powerful countries. China in particular is an extremely powerful and growing country, has an enormous economy, its military is growing. How do we remake an international order that recognizes those realities without simply giving in to their violations of international law? I mean, what actually do we do?
Look, I have 2 points answering your question. Point number one, the all post-war global security system was based on the decision of Security Council of United Nations. Now we see, after the Crimea and after the Russian aggression and occupation, that we definitely need to reform Security Council of United Nations. Definitely it should, again, to be an effective mechanism, even if we have a case like Russia, when we have aggression of the permanent member Security Council. They shouldn't have a veto right. We should take into account the reality of the modern world and exchange the number of the permanent member of Security Council. Definitely, this is the case. Point number two.
Sorry, just to stay with that, because it's a fascinating point. Do you mean to essentially abolish the veto from the current members and just go through the General Assembly? Is that the way forward? I mean, first of all, Russia and China are never, and probably the Americans as well, and the Brits and the French are never going to agree to having their veto taken away. But one never knows. I mean, if you have a vision.
My idea, which I publicly present, if even the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council is a country aggressor, like Russia now in the Crimea and Donbass, this permanent member of Security Council shouldn't have a veto right.
So they should lose. So in other words, there should be certain rules of governance whereby if you're a member of the Security Council and you commit an egregious violation of international law, you're deprived of your veto at the United Nations Security Council.
Absolutely, because this is a conflict of interest, and this is making absolutely ineffective the situation when a Security Council should serve their role. For example, before the World War II, I just want to remind you that USSR was expelled from the League of Nations because USSR was a country aggressor. And we have the precedent in the international law with that. And definitely this is one answer for this question. And we have another part of the things, because we should restore the trust among nations. And I'm quite optimistic after the United States election, which just taken place, and the we very much respect that the American election is the cause of the American people, and no country in the world can influence this election. And I just enjoy for the whole 5 years of my presidency, unique bipartisan support of American nation, both Republican and Democrat. I have a great experience to work with the President Obama, with the President Trump. We enjoy the very strong messages for supporting Ukrainian security. I have a unique experience with a very great diplomat, very great politician, and very great citizen and great leader, Joe Biden. And I'm very much connected with these results of the election, that he is very much committed to restore the international institution, very much committed to rise up the transatlantic solidarity in the global world, and to renew, to return to NATO the ability to be much more effective in the current situation. And definitely, if Joe Biden would serve the role as a global leader, I think that the ability to brutally violate the international law and order would be much smaller. And with this situation, we have a few new proposals for a new United States administration on Ukrainian matters. First of all, I think that we should invite United States to expand the Normandy format. Definitely, we would be happy to see United States among the member of the Normandy format. I mean, not only France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine, but the role of the United States should be expanded from the special representative. And I want to remind and make a special thanks to the Kurt Walker, who was the special representative and was very hard working, making an extremely effective job. And now, if United States would be the member of the Normandy format, I think that the Normandy format would be much more efficient.
There's a nice segue perhaps into a final question about the incoming President Biden, as you've mentioned. Rather famously, he went to Ukraine quite a number of times in the second Obama administration, especially. And presumably he's followed the subject of Ukraine very closely ever since, and certainly because it became a cause célèbre, as everybody knows. Do you believe that the Biden administration is going to be a tough actor on the international stage? There was a certain, I'm not saying this is the correct criticism, but there was a certain criticism that the Obama administration was a little bit soft towards Russia in particular. There's the whole question of the reset. Do you believe that Joe Biden has sort of taken the lessons from perhaps some of the shortcomings associated with regarding Vladimir Putin as somebody one can do business with? Is that your sense? And have you in fact spoken to him in the last couple of years? It'd just be interesting to know.
Yes, I have spoken with him several times in the last couple of years. I do not speak with him after the election, and this is the case. And that was, I don't know, it seems to me it was in 2017 when we have a 75th anniversary of the on his birthday. Sorry, it was on the 20th of November when he has a birthday, and I called him to congratulate him with a birthday. But first of all, Joe Biden is an absolutely great professional for the international relation. He is very strong. He fully understands the importance of Ukraine for the global security. And I really have some hopes that the relationship between Ukraine and the United States move from the strategic partnership relationship which we enjoy under my presidency to the to be aligned, to be this alliance who together, shoulder to shoulder, are ready to protect global freedom and global democracy. And I think that with this situation, my people is in touch with his team, and I'm really proud and have a very strong hopes, keep my fingers crossed, that the efficiency of this relation would be extremely important. There is no better strategy for dealing with Russia than showing strength and unity. This is my personal experience for 5 years, very tough negotiation with Putin, with the support of our reliable friends from NATO, from US, from European Union. Political and economic sanction, as I said before, should be definitely strengthened and keep building upon the military resilience of Ukraine. I'm proud that me as a president create a new Ukrainian army who start to be quite efficient, who stop Russian offensive operation, who create the condition that Russia should pay much higher price for the absolutely avantouristic and criminal decision for the offensive on Ukraine. And with this situation, definitely what we expect as Ukrainian, and me as a fifth president of Ukraine and as a leader of the parliamentary opposition now, that we have a great chance to obtain for Ukraine the membership action plan for NATO. And that would be, from one point of view, the strong motivation for the reform, including the reform in the security and defense sector. And second, that create a better understanding for the potential aggressor that the price for the aggression against the nation who pretending to be the member of NATO would be much higher. And this is definitely will keep peace and security much stronger.
President Poroshenko, once again, it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have you. Thank you for joining us at HFX 2020. And we all hope, if COVID-19 permits and the vaccines work, we can congregate again in Halifax, Nova Scotia next year. Thank you and keep well.
I'm missing all our friends. I want to say a very strong message of support to the Peter, and please transfer my wishes. And again, we agreed about lobster. I still remember this absolutely unique feeling.
Absolutely.
Discussion after the forum. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, and we'll keep in touch.
Definitely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.